my presentation is technically complicated because it's online. So it's from Google Slides, and now we try to get it on the large screen. So without any picture on the projector, I can say that my name is indeed Timur Khrotko, and thank you. So, and I have my PhD thesis was about the mindset of the management, the top management. So I'm not a technical person. I will be talking about organizational problems first of all. So, and I'm running security audits, application security audits, and participating in the audits. Also, I organize security development trainings, and sometimes I'm a trainer also. I train security development lifecycle tricks and measures. We also organize with my friend Glenn Tenkate the DevDev, the large-scale security development training series. You can find my presentation if you want by the link, by the Google short link, and the QR code points to that link. Also, in most of my part, I'm Russian, but I was born in Hungary and I'm living in Hungary. So I am representing here OWASP, and I am the leader of the Hungary chapter. So the domain I have my speech in is application security. So it's not network security, it's application security, and the OWASP is the major organization worldwide which deals with application security. You must know OWASP, of course, I guess. Probably most of the people, they know OWASP for the top 10, but I will ask you to forget top 10. Use that only in education, but never in production. Use other products or projects of OWASP in production, like ASVS, I will mention it, or I will be talking probably in details about the ASVS. Also use cheat sheets in production, and also there are things like testing guide, and if you like top 10, then the other top 10, the proactive controls is for you. Also, the security knowledge framework is a great project that is associated with the ASVS. The content of my presentation is that first I introduce what interview-based interviewing is shortly. Then I introduce my improvised magic quadrant about the application security cases regarding the companies and the teams. And in this context, I will show a couple of types, cases of the relationship between the maturity, application security maturity of the company and its type or circumstances. And I will try to make some references to OWASP project also. So the title of the presentation was Tell Me Stories About Your AppSec and Let's Keep the Pen Tests. Of course, it's just a figure of speech, because I'm not saying that you have to abandon all vulnerability testing. Rather, I'm saying that let's extend the measures of application security to interviewing also. Interview-based audit is a grounded method. So it's a method used in organizational development, for example. I mean, the interview-based audit. And here we try to do interview-based application security audits. With the audits, with this kind of audits, we try to hunt for the root causes of application security. So while in the dynamic testing or in the code review, you try to locate the exact technical problems, and from that you can have some insight on the problems in the process. With the interviewing, you can go to the process directly and find the root causes. And my statement is that, or hypothesis is that the vast majority, if not all, application security problems are rooted in management, in the managerial problems. Interview is a simple thing. It's just that you sit down with a person and ask questions. It's an asymmetric talk because you are asking and the other person has to answer the questions. The narrative interview is just simply that you are not interested in the statements the person makes. You are interested in stories, and you ask the person, the interviewee, to tell you stories. So you don't give a fuck about what his opinion is regarding what kind of security they do. If he says that they have decent application security and decent secure development lifecycle, it's not interesting. Let's hear the stories, and from the stories you get the account of the reality. Of course, you have to be tricky and cautious because people not always tell the truth. Yes, and narrative was also one of the buzzwords of the last year probably, besides the Russian trolls and sexual harassment. So, what are the messages of mine? Is that capturing secure development problems is possible by doing interviews with, first of all, management and also with the developers. And I'm saying that most of the time people themselves know about the security problems and the root causes. It's just that you talk with them and you try to interpret what kind of security problems they may have. It also means that you have to be knowledgeable in the domain of application security in order to discover the problems in their stories, for example. So it's not only that you directly hear about the problems, that it's also that indirectly you can find out what problems are. The interview-based approach is also good because it's management-friendly, let's say, because managers are less interested in the technical terms that you deliver, say, with the penetration test report or vulnerability audit report. In this case, you speak the language of the management. Also, narrative interviewing can be even more friendly with the managers because they tell stories and people like telling stories. Of course, if you are interviewing the management, you have to use tricks in order to avoid the virtue of managers, which is to show the reality in the colors they want you to see it. But there, as I mentioned, established interviewing practices so you can overcome this problem. My proposition is that interview-based research is even more contemporary as the companies become more mature in terms of application security. And also this method is efficient and also cheaper than, say, week-long or 2 weeks long vulnerability audit. The target or the aim of the interview-based audit is not to fix the problems with a given product. It's rather about fixing the problems with the processes, with how the organization or development flow works, how the measures of security development lifecycle and the security controls work. So you are to discover this part of the process. And with your work, you try to improve the processes at the given customer. This is my magic quadrant. It's very raw, so it's improvised. It's just to give a feel about how we can approach the application security problems in a given organization. On the leftmost column, there are the maturity of the organization in application security or security development. And in the bottommost row, you see 4 types of organizations. Relationship of organizations' relationship to application security. How they try to establish application security. So, for example, in tape A, they try to adhere to or fulfill the specifications and requirements. That's like the entry-level approach to application security. The second is about having security champions. It's fashionable nowadays. The C type is more about corporations, where you have different policies that are to ensure that your software production results in secure software. And finally, the type D is about the teams or departments with freak people, the freak people who are crazy about security, or they are engaged in the work they do, the development. So the other sections are the cases. I will talk about them shortly. And there are also an off-the-grid case on the point 0, which is no maturity, no application security, and no methods of ensuring security. So let's start with this extreme case, and probably the Hungarian visitors all know about this case of the last summer when we had that web shop where you could buy tickets for public transport. It was the project by the Center for Budapest Transport. Center for Budapest Transport. That's how they translate BKK. It's not English, it's like bad Google translation. So, and these things speak about the culture of the given organization. For example, how they translate their names. Did they use a professional translator to put their names into English? So in this case, they said that the web shop is an extension to the ticket vending machines. Well, so that they will be using the partner who delivered the ticket vending machine system, which is Deutsche Telekom. And in this case, of course, it's possible, because if you have a decent server side with decent API of supporting selling tickets, for example, it doesn't matter what kind of client you have. The client can be a ticket vending machine, or mobile application, or the web shop. So the cover story technically can be correct. In December, the arbitrage decided that it was a fake story because the web shop has nothing in common with the ticket vending system. And the problem was, as you know, or most of you know, that server took as a parameter the price of the ticket that returned from the web app. That was a problem. Was it? No, the problem was that the server did not do any validation or business terms interpretation what input it had from the web application. So it's not a vulnerability, it's like a complete misconception about the web application working. But we cannot blame the supplier or the creator or the party delivering this web shop because the T systems, because they are very good in creating applications and also in security testing. So what is the problem? As the arbitrage says, one of the problems that these parties, the BKK and T systems, they had. So the statement of work and the certificate of acceptance were issued on the same day. So here, in my verdict, we have a problem of a 0 days vulnerability, days in plural. So it's a Hungarian probably. So if you have a project when you have to design code, test, and everything, and do everything else. My statement is that the root causes are management. And in this case, so this case is about complete mismanagement and misunderstanding, not only of application security, but also of the development process as a domain or whatever. So what kind of application security questions could you impose on these people? Well, in regards of application security, you cannot ask anything like this girl shows. It's rather a question of the mentality. Because in this case, if the developers were quality freaks or the testers were quality freaks and they said to the management that it's just impossible to deliver this application to the date of the start of the swimming sports worldwide championship, because that was the aim of the management, to show off with something like e-tickets. And this kind of management will just find another gang who could develop an application overnight. So you cannot prevent, there is no mean to prohibit yourself against bad management. And this is an extreme example, but my example is also about that it's not a thing in itself, the managerial decision making. It's within a culture. So in this case, you can see that in different cases, not much has changed from the times of Soviet Union, or probably from the times of Ottoman Empire or Turkish rule, because this kind of managerial approach is that kind of managerial approach. So let's step forward to a normal type, the type A in my grid. I call the case of those who are specification driven, the awakens. This is rather the case of the beginners. And this is rather the majority of the development which is done according to the specification. So in this case, developers fulfill the specification in the normal case. Yeah. And what guarantees the application security in this case? Of course, the specification itself, the requirements. On the other side, the usual practices in the given country. For example, because if you have an average development company in Hungary, it does different job than an average development company in a Danish development company, or a different job than a development company in India. So the cultural circumstances also important, not only the specification. So the mindset is also important. In this case, you have a mindset that you deliver something for money that you will be paid for in case you fulfill the specification. So what kind of interview questions can you impose on this case? First of all, let's dig into how much time or how they, what proportions of the time frame they devote to testing and to design and for coding. Of course, on the picture you see an idealistic case when 40% is devoted for design and 40% for testing. Because if someone, 20 behind Uncle Sam for coding. So if one follows this rule, the quality of the product of the software will be quite decent. And as a byproduct, the security quality of the software can be decent. You also can ask questions about how they do security testing. They probably don't, but your questions can help them thinking about that they should. And also a question how they design features, security features, because if developers design security features themselves, that's a bad case. They need to ask for a specialist. And also the question is what kind of security requirements they follow, because probably it's OWASP top 10. And as I said, never use OWASP top 10 as a set of security requirements. OWASP top 10 is for educational purposes only. So if you have a specification that says that top 10 is the set of security requirements, just don't follow this requirement, because it's impossible to make a software that is free of top 10 vulnerabilities. That's why this specification says from time to time. If you are a fan of top 10, then please use top 10 proactive controls of OWASP. It's very handy. It's a small piece of text. Here you have these evangelistic statements like verify for security early and often. Okay, parameterize queries. Okay, very basic. And so on. So in the proactive controls document, you will find the description of the problem, also the aspects of it, some references to OWASP Top 10, and also references, for example, for OWASP cheat sheets, because cheat sheets, that is the OWASP thing that will help you in development. Let's move further. The B case is about security champions. Security champions becomes fashionable nowadays, so I have to warn you that it's not a magic measure to have a security champion in your team. So the illustration shows these balance, because let's say she's a champion, a security champion in your team or in your division. But security champion is not panacea. So security champion is a feature of your team, is a feature of your division that can help the team and the division to do decent secure development or security quality in the development. Probably you know that security champions were probably introduced by the old Microsoft SDL methodology, the secure development methodology of the Microsoft. It's old, but I tell you, let's use it because it's very easy to use. So in this case, the question is, what happens behind the back of the girl in the dark? So the question is if she is accepted by the team, if she can help the team. The security champion should not be a knowledgeable person in security. The role of the security champion is to represent the issue of security, for example, on meetings. So just to be a trigger to sense if there is a situation that security competence or treatment of security is needed, like when there are changes to the specification. The question is whether this change incur any change in security features, for example. So that's the role of the security champion. So what about the narrative interview questions in this case? It can be, for example, tell us a story how difficult it was to represent the security problem at the meeting with your team, or what was the support of the leaders, because leaders has to support this situation, has to legitimize the role of security champion. For the security champion thing, OWASP has a new product or project, security champion playbook. So it's a good start off for implementing security champions in your organization. Let's move from the small scale of security champions to the large scale of corporations. And it's not necessarily a corporation that has engineered policies, but most of the times the corporation have policies and also application security policies. In their case, the compliance is the circumstance they want to adhere to. So if this nice manager people, they have good mentality and their decision-making processes are good, and they, for example, employ decent security consultants for the company, and corporations can afford to buy competence from the market. Most of the time, the small companies, they cannot afford to buy consultancy, but large applications, they can. So in many cases, large applications can represent the best practices of secure development because they can buy the good practices and implement these practices in their organizations. What kind of questions can we impose on these type of organizations? Of course, the first question is that, okay, that you have a policy for example, application security, but it is the fact of life that people never read policies and guides. So these guides can just sit on the shelf. So the question is whether these policies and these regulations are present in the development practices, and whether, for example, there is a guide of how to implement security features, probably with code patterns. Are these patterns present in the code, really? Of course, this cannot be validated by an interview, so you have to do code review for that. But you can ask how the secure development lifecycle measures are implemented in the organization. And you can make your judgment of the situation from the answers. For this kind of companies that follow policies and fulfill the requirements, the OWASP provides its best product today. It's the Application Security Verification Standard, the ASVS. So if you don't use ASVS, please use it. I'm telling you, it's not like an OWASPer, but I really believe that today this is the way to implement decent application security and secure development processes in your organization. Generally, the case is in the corporation you have to implement level 2. It's like 200 plus requirements, but it's not necessary to implement all of these requirements. In case of like banks or high-risk applications, it's level 3 that you have to comply with. The ASVS you can find on the GitHub. The forms you can find it. One form is Microsoft document. The other form is PDF, and also an Excel sheet. So the Excel sheet is the best format for checklists, and ASVS is a checklist. So here you can see that there are questions that are applicable on level 1. There are questions that are applicable on level 2 and level 3, depending on the risk or assurance level of the application. And also you can say that some of the questions are not applicable in your case, and that's okay. In the document, in the Word document, you can find explanations to the chapters, what these controls or requirements are all about. So it's helpful to check the text also. Let's move forward to the last type identified in my improvised grid of application maturity versus the relationship of the team to the application security quality. So, I call it the collectively engaged type, and it's most of the times about freaks, about the quality assurance freaks, and there are teams like that in real life, I mean. So people who are not only deliver a software that is compliant or fulfills the specification, they also think of their work in the terms of quite fanatism, because for them the quality of the code is important. And if you are a fanatic of quality of your software, the security quality of the code will be provided as a byproduct. So in this case, if people are quality freaks, they most of the time deliver secure software without being experts in security. On the illustration, you can see a Scrum meeting of a Danish team, development team, and we have to. So I have to say that this kind of quality assurance weakness, it can be a property of a team, not of a corporation, of course, because it's a quality of a group of people, of a like-minded group of people. So it's a case of a mindset. Big companies, corporations can also establish such an approach if the HR, for example, hunt for persons like that. So it's again a question of the executive management that decides what quality of people we need in the company. And this decision will also result in the quality of security in the company. The interesting thing that, and I met this kind of situation, that even if people are quality freaks, they still have a conflict, because in the normal software development, you have to deliver features by the schedule. So you have short times to deliver the feature or the product. And security is just an obstacle in fulfilling your deadlines. So it's tricky to balance between your need to, or internal need to produce quality, and the schedule. And sometimes, probably a team leader can be in this schizophrenic situation when he has to decide what time to devote to the development of the feature and what time to devote to security. But still, we can speak about it. And also in these organizations or on these teams, you can ask a question whether, despite the time pressure, they have like a minimum one sprint dedicated to the backlogged security issues. That's also important to have at least one sprint dedicated not for the features but for the security. I'm returning to the ASVS because I want to evangelize the ASVS among you. So ASVS has chapters or sections like authentication, session management, or business logic, or input validation, or HTTP security, secure server configuration. This is my remix of the topics. That's why they are not in the order. The order is like V1, V15. So the first category is about the architecture. The second is about the access management, things like session management or even HTTP security configuration. The largest part, of course, is the input validation, because this question is the source, major source of the hackability of your software. And also cryptography, security features. I would identify a DevOps category in these ESVS categories, like malicious controls, server configuration. And now ESVS tries to deal with IoT and embedded systems, and also specifically with API and web services. Now we have mobile ASVS. So if you do mobile application development, just please use this product. It's even better than the classic ASVS. It has different chapters, and it has a different approach. Here you have a standard level of security quality and the defense in-depth level, and you can combine it with resilience. Also use a security knowledge framework to implement ASVS, because it will help you to manage the security requirements of ASVS and your own custom security requirements through the life cycle of your project or your application. And you can measure the progress of your security treatment. That's all. In the end, I want to just list the sources that you can check for the news of application security and security. So even if you follow the Security Now podcast, which is delivered by grandpas for the general public, you will stay tuned for the current security problems. And also news that the biggest event of OWASP in Europe, the appsec EU, will be held not in Israel but in the UK. So please try to visit that best gathering of application security in Europe. Thank you for your attention. I hope that something was interesting in my speech. I cannot see the questions, so if you have a question while we have more time, I will still try to answer it if you just ask it out loud.